Click-through rate is probably the most important metric to pay attention to on your gaming channel because it tells us how many people actually click on our video when they see it listed on YouTube. Now, optimizing your videos to get a high click-through rate is absolutely critical if you want to succeed on YouTube. And you're in luck because in today's video, I've got a friend who's going to help shed some light on exactly that. G'day, my name's Marcus. I've worked on multiple successful channels, but I understand that getting views and subscribers is bloody goddamn hard. And I know that because when I first started on YouTube, I sucked. But now I suck a little bit less, so I started GYGC to share some of my experiences, tactics, and strategies. So today I wanted to share a snippet of a conversation I had with Matt Gielen. Matt's the main man behind Little Monster Media, and he's worked on many channels such as Frederator, WatchMojo.com, and Good Mythical Morning, garnering over 40 billion video views in the process. And yes, that was billion with a B. Now you guys know I'm constantly harping on about click-through rate, and according to my Grow Your Gaming Channel method, it's one of the top 3 things you need to prioritize if you want to grow quickly. Now Matt also thinks click-through rate is extremely important, and that's why I'm excited to share the following footage with you in which Matt's kindly going to share some of his knowledge on how to improve your click-through rate. Enjoy. So on the Grow Your Gaming Channel method, for example, one of the top things is, the top 3 things I have is mindset, click-through rate, and having good viewer retention, basically, not necessarily in that order. But I know you are kind of like the master when it comes to click-through rate stuff. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. First of all, some specific questions on click-through rate that I get a lot, and I'd like to hear your takes on them. And so first is on click-through rate, obviously on desktop and sometimes mobile, you can see little bits of the description below the video. How much does that description actually matter in terms of your click-through rate?
I have no idea, but I would imagine not very much, if at all.
And so do you have any general tips then or best practices that you like to use when creating good titles, and if these are specifically applicable to gaming channels?
Specifically applicable to gaming channels really varies a lot by channel, but essentially we think about titles and copy in thumbnails, which is words in thumbnails, in kind of 3 broad buckets, right? This would be a tease, an information gap, and a value proposition. A value proposition is, this is what's in the video. A information gap would be for example, a question, right? An information gap is the idea that someone has a gap in information in their head, right? So something like, why is the sky blue? I don't know. Why is the sky blue? I have to click on your video now in order to find out. And a tease would be something like, you won't believe what happens next. Now, teases have gotten far more intricate and intelligent kind of across the board, but those are kind of the 3 buckets that we think about. And kind of the place where you don't want to be is having both the same one of those in the title and in the thumbnail, or thumbnail and title, where you have 2 teases or 2 information gaps or 2 value propositions, right? Because that creates cognitive dissonance, right? Where the viewer now doesn't actually know what your video is about, right? Well, is this video about, X or Y, right? Now I have 2 questions in my head and now I'm confused, right? The kind of the best combination we've found is a tease in the thumbnail and an information gap in the title, right? Or a tease in the thumbnail and a value proposition in the title. Now that value proposition can be loud and intense. It doesn't have to be, this video is about X, right? But some of the biggest gamers in the world do a really fantastic job of having a tease in the thumbnail, right? And other good thumbnail design elements where you go, ooh, what's this video about? And you read the title and you're like, oh, wow, and you have to click onto it.
What length do you kind of recommend for titles?
For titles specifically, the length that allows you to communicate the message that you're trying to communicate with the viewer. Generally speaking, we found viewers don't read more than 5 to 6 words, and often 5 to 6 words is only what shows up in the various areas where a video could show up. So make those first 5 to 6 words count. No, we have not found shorter is better. There's definitely instances of that, but generally speaking, no.
Yeah, makes sense. So I'd love to hear then. Obviously, you talk a lot about testing, and I'm very much about testing as well. But I think sometimes people do tests with situations or content that is kind of different. So, for example, if you're posting two different videos at two different times, there might have been an influx of viewership because of something completely unrelated to your channel at that time, which then boosted the video. And so those tests are kind of null and void. So when you're testing content on channels, how do you kind of mitigate that?
There's no way to kind of mitigate all the potential variables going on YouTube, right? Even YouTube struggles to do that. There's entire research papers just written about, all of all the hoops they have to jump through just to analyze their own data, right? And make it as clean as possible, right? But even then, they still understand that there's inherent biases in the data, right? So like coming up with like a totally clean test when you know definitively one thing or another, never going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen on the YouTube platform. So you do the best you can and try to eliminate all the variables, but you're going to understand the context of your channel and content better than anyone else. And so it's just important to kind of keep in mind all the potential variables on any sort of test you're doing, and do the best you can.
The last question regarding that, I lied, that wasn't the last question. Is when you're a smaller channel, obviously analyzing analytics, I find it can be difficult. For example, like I was working with someone, a student who was getting 60% click-through rates, just because there was pretty much no one seeing his videos, kind of thing. So for all of the people with very small or practically non-existent channels watching this, what lens would you recommend they look at their analytics through?
I would say a very, very skeptical one. Whenever you're dealing with limited data, like a lot of the data that comes back to you in YouTube analytics is statistically significant data in the sense of it's not literally every piece of data that YouTube has, because it would just be impossible for them to do that, right? A lot of it is based on sampling, right? So no matter how big you get, you want to be cautious of, I wouldn't say believing your analytics, but basing every decision you make off of purely the data and not as much about the context, right? Because like you could have a video, let's say you put up videos and each one gets an average of 1 million views, right? And then you put up a video that gets 10 million views, right? Well, the average person would be like, oh, well, I should do more of that. Well, what if that one got 10 million views, but it's on something that is completely devoid of what your channel is about, as a reason why it got those 10 million views, right? Like you don't want to, just lead with like a purely, data-driven approach. It's important to have context and long-term planning within it. So, if you're a small creator, if you're doing, less than 5,000, 2,000 views a month, like I would say just worry about what you're seeing from an audience retention perspective. And in terms of, topics about what to make the video about and that sort of thing, like it can be helpful. But when you're that side, like, or that size, I would say the more important analysis to do is just kind of a self-analysis, just based on kind of like the raw view numbers and how you're feeling about the videos beyond the kind of the retention metrics. Because everything else is just going to be, every video is going to have an asterisk next to it. Oh, well, this one because this, and oh, that one because this. Like, it's going to be real difficult to pull any sort of like meaningful insights out of your YouTube analytics when you're that size.
Yeah, 100% makes sense.
Spend that time doing collaborations, right? Looking at YouTube videos for inspiration and thinking about like, what's something that I could do that would be interesting to viewers that maybe they never saw before. Like, spend that time doing that.
So how cool was that? I hope you found that helpful. Now, if you'd like to hear more from Matt, feel free to check out his channel, Little Monster Media. It's linked in the description. Speaking of helpful though, if you enjoyed this video, I reckon you'd enjoy the video that's linked on screen. In it, we cover what I believe to be some very important topics that'll help you grow your gaming channel. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm off to fit a seatbelt to my motorbike, and I'll catch you later.